The 2025 Indiana Fever weren't supposed to last this long. Not in a league ruled by dynasties. Not when their roster was gutted by injuries and their star players were held together by sheer willpower. Not when the Las Vegas Aces, the two-time defending champions, stood in their path. Yet somehow they did. What began as a season of optimism turned into one of the most gut-wrenching, awe-inspiring playoff runs the WNBA has ever seen. And at the center of it all was a coach who refused to let her team surrender to circumstance. Stephanie White's words after that final, heartbreaking loss told a story that went beyond a scoreboard. They captured the very soul of this franchise, a story of resilience, unity, and unshakable belief. From the opening moments of the year, it was clear the Fever were going to be tested. The optimism that surrounded Caitlin Clark's arrival had barely settled before the universe started throwing punches. Clark went down mid-July with a painful groin injury. Sydney Colson tore her ACL. Ari McDonald, Sophie Cunningham, and Chloe BBY all suffered knee or foot issues that sidelined them for weeks at a time. Even Damaris Dantas missed crucial stretches after a concussion. By August, the Fever weren't just missing players, they were missing an identity. On paper, this team shouldn't have survived. But Stephanie White refused to let them fall apart. Every practice, every timeout, every press conference, her message stayed the same, one foot in front of the other. Perseverance wasn't optional. It was their culture. She reminded her players what it meant to lead with grace, to sacrifice for the greater good, and to never let circumstance dictate effort. It didn't matter that rotations changed nightly or that hardship contracts had to be signed just to fill the bench. What mattered was that every player in that locker room understood who they were representing. White's leadership kept the team grounded, and that faith began to pay off in ways no one could have imagined. They shocked Minnesota in the Commissioner's Cup, pulling off a win that most experts dismissed as a fluke. But inside Indiana's locker room, it meant something more. It was validation. It was proof that their belief in one another wasn't misplaced. Every win, every comeback, every hard-fought possession became another crack in the narrative that Indiana was just rebuilding. By the time the playoffs rolled around, the Fever had become something dangerous. A team with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. That mentality carried them through the postseason. They stunned Atlanta on the road in an elimination game. Then, somehow, they took the mighty Las Vegas Aces, stacked with MVPs and All-Stars, to a fifth and deciding game. It was supposed to be a formality for Vegas. Instead, it turned into a war. From the opening tip of Game 5, chaos reigned. The Fever were already short-handed, but they fought like their lives depended on it. Then came the moment that sucked the air out of the arena. Kelsey Mitchell collapsed on the floor. The team's leading scorer, their heartbeat, had to be carried off and rushed to the hospital for severe cramps. You could feel the collective heartbreak. Losing Mitchell should have been the breaking point. But it wasn't. The Fever didn't crumble. They doubled down. Aaliyah Boston was battling for her life in the paint. Every possession seemed to come with another whistle, another questionable call. The frustration was visible. The composure, remarkable. And through it all, Odyssey Sims played the game of her life. 27 points. Big shots in big moments. Pure grit. Shaw Petty came off the bench to deliver crucial threes. Lexi Hull, the quiet workhorse, made the kind of hustle plays that never show up in headlines but define seasons. Every player refused to yield. Every player took ownership of the moment. Then came the call that changed everything. 27 seconds left. Aaliyah Boston fouled out on a phantom whistle. The collective disbelief was palpable. Yet somehow, the Fever forced overtime. That extra period wasn't about strategy anymore. It was about heart. The Fever were running on fumes, but they still traded blows with the league's best. In the end, Chelsea Gray buried them with her dagger jumper. Vegas advanced. Indiana's season was over. But the story didn't end there. In the post-game press conference, Stephanie White didn't sound like a coach mourning a loss. She sounded like a builder looking at the blueprint of something extraordinary. They kept getting back up collectively, she said. No matter what we went through, they never blinked. They never held their heads down. They just stood tall and faced it head-on. Those weren't words of consolation. They were a declaration of identity. The locker room was quiet, heavy with exhaustion. Players icing their knees, wrapping ankles. staring at the floor in disbelief. The kind of silence that usually marks the end of something. But not this time. Because when White spoke about her team being an absolute joy to coach, you could see the faces around her lift. She wasn't just talking about effort. She was talking about legacy. About how, despite the heartbreak, this team had discovered something unteachable. The power of togetherness. Lexi Hull later said it best. It would have been easy to give up, to call it a rebuilding year. But Coach White didn't let us. She challenged us to fight every single night. That's what set this team apart. They didn't have the luxury of comfort. They had fight, and they made it contagious. Every time a player went down, another stepped up. Every time the odds tilted against them, they pushed harder. That's what White meant when she said this group was special. They'd become the standard. And the ripple effect was immediate. Analysts started to talk about Indiana differently. No longer the bottom dwellers of the WNBA, they were now described as the blueprint for how to build a contender. They weren't carried by one star, they were held together by a culture. By a coach who refused to let adversity be the story. By players who made resilience their identity. By a fan base that rediscovered belief. When asked how soon she would start preparing for next season, White didn't hesitate. Tomorrow, she said. No rest, no mourning period, just focus. That's who she is. And now, that's who the Fever are. Her tone wasn't desperation. It was hunger. She knows what they've built, and she knows what's coming. Because what this team went through wasn't just a season of hardship, it was a trial by fire. Even in defeat, the Fever had reshaped their reputation. They went from being dismissed as a novelty built around Caitlin Clark's popularity to being feared as a collective built on toughness. The Aces may have advanced, but they knew they'd been pushed harder than ever before. Las Vegas survived, not dominated. And everyone watching knew the Fever would be back. Players echoed that sentiment. Aaliyah Boston called it the best season of her career, not because of wins, but because of the bond they built. These women became my sisters, she said. It was the most fun I've ever had playing basketball. That connection is what transforms good teams into great ones. Sophie Cunningham took it even further. You better believe we're coming for everybody next season. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Because when you look at the roster coming back, the warning is real. Caitlin Clark, finally healthy, ready to reclaim her throne as one of the most dynamic players in the sport. Aaliyah Boston, dominant in the paint, a player every franchise dreams of building around. Kelsey Mitchell, the scoring engine who's never been more respected. And Lexi Hull, the glue who keeps everyone accountable. Add Stephanie White's leadership, and you don't just have a team, you have the foundation of a dynasty. That's what this playoff run did. It stripped away the noise and revealed who the Indiana Fever really are. A team that fights through pain, ignores excuses, and plays with purpose. A team that doesn't need validation from critics because they've already earned it from one another. A team that proved heart matters just as much as talent. The Fever may have lost the series, but they won something that can't be measured in wins or losses. They won respect. They won belief. And maybe most importantly, they won the right to dream bigger. Because this time, they didn't fold, they fought until the very last whistle. And when the dust settled, the message was clear. Indiana isn't rebuilding anymore. They're rising. So now, as the lights fade on the 2025 season and the focus shifts to what's next, one question remains. Will the heartbreak of this loss become the foundation of their future triumph? Can this team, scarred, strengthened, and bonded by adversity, turn 2026 into the year they finally claim the championship they've earned? Let us know what you think in the comments below. How proud are you of this team's fight? Do you believe the Fever's journey has only just begun? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. The Indiana Fever may have lost the game, but make no mistake, they've already begun winning the story.